All right. So, how did I get into filmmaking or into making movies? Well, I wish I had a short answer for that because there's not really one short answer to answer that question. It's it was a series of things that led me into this path. If you had asked me when I was a kid, what did I want it to be when I grew up? My kindergarten teacher would tell you that I wanted to be a firefighter. That never happened, of course. So I guess I'll just start off around 20, I think it was around 2009. Let's start there. In 2009, I had bought a Canon PowerShot, and I really just wanted a camera to take pictures. I've always was into pictures, especially wildlife. When I was a kid, my mother used to have one of those little Sony point and shoot, and I would just take it for her sometimes, and I would photograph butterflies, lizards, and so forth in the Dominican Republic when we were on vacation. But then when she wanted, or actually when she was going to go out with her friends, she would just take the camera, and I couldn't use it anymore. And cell phone pictures weren't as good at that time. And I didn't have a cell phone because, again, I was a child. But I always remember that that I loved photographing nature, wildlife. So in 2009, when I was already 19, I was independent. I moved out of my mother's house. I was living in my aunt's basement at the same time, paying rent, just learning how to live life and working. So I found myself for the first time being independent, having my own car, working, having a bank account, and eventually I bought a Canon PowerShot. I think it was the 20x zoom. And before that, I had not experienced anything with high definition. And the Canon PowerShot that I bought only shot up to 720p, but all I knew was 480, even though I didn't know it was 480 at that time, but that's the only resolution that I knew. So when I bought the Canon PowerShot, which I mostly bought for pictures, and then I realized, oh, this thing actually does video too. And that's kind of interesting. And then I eventually just started taking some videos with it at 720p. And I remember I would film squirrels, and I would zoom in on the squirrels because it had a 20x zoom lens in it, even though it was just really cropping the image, but what did I know at the time? And eventually I started realizing that not only did I like taking pictures, but I also like taking videos. But I realized that with videos, the sound wasn't good. It was horrible, it was noisy, and I didn't know how to fix that. So I just continued taking pictures. Long story short, from 2009 all the way up to 2015, I became a photographer. I did weddings, I did sweet 15s, quinceañeras in Spanish. I don't know if they do that in American culture, or sweet 16s, but I did sweet 15s. And I also did baby showers. And so I was, doing photography. My first, I guess, professional or prosumer camera was the Nikon D7000. And that was a jump from the Canon PowerShot. And that one did 1080p. But again, I always shied away from videos because the sound. I just couldn't get good sound, and I didn't understand how some people got good sound. And I just did photography. But eventually, and I'm trying to be as brief as I can, eventually I got tired of photography. And the reason I got tired of photography was because while I was getting paid to do wedding and birthdays and sweet 16s and baby showers and photo sessions, I really wasn't enjoying that. I really was not enjoying that at all. What I always enjoyed was wildlife. But again, lenses were extremely expensive. Those Nikors, 400, 600, 800 millimeter. I just couldn't afford that to buy, to get into wildlife. So in 2014, I got my first Mac. I've always been a Windows user. So I got my first Mac. And long story short, Final Cut Pro 10 had came out. I never used Final Cut Pro 7. In fact, when I bought my first Mac, everybody was divided over the new user interface over Final Cut Pro 10, but Final Cut Pro 10 was the first, I guess you can say, professional editing software that I used. And that's when I realized that you can color grade, manipulate images. I thought that was just something you can do to pictures, but I realized I had like an eye for that. So I learned how to edit on Final Cut Pro 10. I learned how to, do color correction. That also got my curiosity into learning more about editing. And eventually I discovered a whole new interest, which was editing. And then I bought my first camera that shot in 4K and had a log profile, which was the GH5. Now I had bought the GH5, I believe was used from B&H Photo, but it was my first time experimenting with a log profile, flat, so many things you can do with it. And that camera had a lot of resolution and I was impressed with it. And then eventually I started taking the video side of things more serious. Now, again, up to this point, I am not interested in movies. I have no desire to do movies. I'm just liking the editing aspect of it. So I don't want to bore you too much, but trust me when I say this, I got good at editing and I realized that most movies, they go through some editing process. And while professional cinematographers and directors and production people get as much as they can on set, there's still some tweak that goes on into post. And when I saw that that was the case, that's when I started realizing, like, wait a second, maybe I can do this. And then that's when I started digging, how do you get better sound? And so I was researching online that if you want to get sound, do not use the microphone on the camera, but instead just buy a separate recorder and get sound separately. So I did some studying how that goes, how do you sync and post, etc. And so in I think it was 2020, during the pandemic, when they started giving all those stimulus checks, I actually used those to, buy my first recorder, which was a Zoom H6, which, nothing against Zoom, but that's all I knew at the time. I thought that was a professional recorder, but I would not use that today. It's good to start and learn, but it's a bit noisy. But I used that and I bought two Sennheiser's MKH416 on Reverb for $1,200. The guy actually gave me a deal for both of them. And that was the first time I had experience with professional shotgun microphones. And so I had to learn and get the gist of how to sync and pose, how to do sound. And once I learned that, that's when I started to see, like, oh, wait a second. Now I know how to do this. Now I know how to edit. Now I know how to frame. And photography, actually, because I did photography for from 2009 up to 2015, I believe, 6 years around there. Photography taught me the basics, the rule of thirds, how to frame. I always had an eye. And so that's why, cinematography in a sense is called motion pictures, because they're pictures that move. So I just grabbed the mindset of the photography side and I just started then to frame for the shot and so forth. And then I realized I had to study cinematography because it's not the same as photography. So I started reading books. I started then realizing that you have to light. Just like in photography, you use a flash, but in cinematography, you need to use continuous light. And eventually I got some aperture lights for the first times, and I just started experimenting. It has been like a whole series of events from 2009 when I first bought my Canon PowerShot all the way to 2021 when I was confident enough with all the skills, all the knowledge I had acquired until the time. I am so sorry. My camera just died on me by mistake. I had to get a new battery. that happens. Anyways, what I was saying is that by 2021, when I was confident enough, I wanted to try making a film, a short film. Nothing crazy, nothing fancy, nothing. I just wanted to try this out because I had the confidence that I can do this. And so I had moved from New Jersey to Philly in 2018, so I didn't know anybody here in Philly. So I just threw myself out there, and then I met a guy named Zay, which we are very cool to this day. You know, he's produced a lot of content, and I have directed them and so forth. In fact, the last feature film that I worked on was his, Broken Redemption. That's going to come out in 2026, Lord willing, in streaming services. I'll keep you updated. But that was the first time that I did my short with people. I had done a short with cats, which you can find on my channel, but I had no experience with actual people. And that's really where it goes. That's where you're really going to see if this works or not. And he paired me up with two individuals that never acted before. I actually thought they had some form of acting experience. They did not. So that was really challenging, you know, really challenging. And everything I had learned up to that point, everything I've read about sound, cinematography, lighting, editing, and so forth, I implemented it. And then that's when Why Do You Love Me was done. That was the first short that I ever directed, filmed, did the sound with actual people in it, did the editing, did the color grading, although I really didn't do much to that because I got everything right as much as I could on set, the lighting, the sound. So there wasn't much I had to do to that. And that's something that many independent people don't understand, that if you get things right on set, there's not much you have to do to the sound or to the image. That's why you get it right. That whole idea that we fix it in post, no, that's just sloppiness or people being lazy for not doing things right on set. And I'll make another video on that topic. But after I did Why Do You Love Me, that's when I realized that I actually like doing films and that I can direct and that I can, you know, light. And so eventually after that, I just been reinvesting in my company, in my production company. And I've invested in all the professional microphones that I can, the Sheps, the DPAs, things like that. I did own Sennheisers. I sold them, but eventually I'll get one another time, especially the MKH50. I don't know why I sold that mic. But I started investing in analog equipment as well, because I also mix and master my own music, my own production, film scores. Again, I realized I liked filmmaking by a whole series of events, which I just really try to sum up as much as I can. I'm not going to go into detail because this video would be like 2 hours, you know, trying to explain almost like a decade of things that I learned and so forth. And you know, it's just insane. But it all started with that Canon PowerShot. Had I not bought that Canon PowerShot in 2009, I'm positive I would not be making movies today. Because through that Canon PowerShot is where I rediscovered my love for photography, and I discovered my love for making movies by actually filming and capturing videos. And that led me to then get into editing, and then that led me into learning sound and so forth. So it's just been a journey. It hasn't been a night to day success, or it hasn't been something that just occurred on Friday night until Sunday. It's just been years of failures. I mean, my first 2 films or 3 films that I did, if you take into consideration Stray Cats, the first short that I did without no people, but I still had to do it. Even after I did my first film, Julie's Confession, I still doubted myself. I still doubted myself. I thought it wasn't good enough, and I am very hard on myself. That's one thing about me. I want to meet the Hollywood standard because I take this serious. I take people's time serious. I'm not going to give people trash. I'm not going to give people a bad movie to watch. I take all of this into consideration. And so I was very hard on myself, but eventually the more you do this job, it just becomes a part of you. And I just finished filming my first feature film. Now, when I say my first full feature film, I mean the film is 2 hours and 3 minutes. I have never done anything like that before. And the reason I say full feature is because I think if I'm not mistaken, the Academy Awards, they defined a feature as anything over 45 minutes that could be played with commercial within an hour. And then other institutions define a feature in another way. So, well, we all know that a feature is at least something 90 minutes and above. So I did that. And now I'm at a point where I'm confident in what I do. I love it. This is just part of who I am, and I'm going to continue doing it. So that's really how I got into making motion pictures, making movies, making films. It just started with a Canon PowerShot in 2009. And let me tell you, since 2009 up to now, technology has changed a lot, very much. And had it not been like that, then, I probably wouldn't be here. But, which also gives you another video too, the more technology we have, it's like the less good art and the less good movies come out because we have access to all these things. But that's another topic. But thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for taking your time and being with me. We'll continue to speak on more other topics. And thank you. God bless you. And I'll see you in the next video.